Midnight. When Micheal Jordan punched Steve Kerr. Let's begin. This is my favorite MJ story of all time. A lot of teammates hated each other and would even fight. And usually it was in private, but Steve Kerr made this one public. Wait, Steve Kerr started the fight? Yeah, he's crazy. Or as he would say. In 1995, the training camp began. It's been 2 years since the Bulls made it to the finals. After losing to the Magic in the playoffs, critics started to hate on Micheal Jordan. Many of them thought MJ was too old and that he was past his prime. MJ heard everything that they said about him, and he took it personally. The whole team was angry, including Steve Kerr, who decided he was going to show off his anger. When talking about this day, he said, "It's Micheal Jordan, the greatest player ever. But I was pretty competitive too. I played. Chip on my shoulder. I had to or I wouldn't have made it." So Steve Kerr thought the only way he would make the team was being as competitive as Jordan. First off, that's impossible. And second, this probably won't end well. But maybe it did end well. Because Steve Kerr made the team. But Steve Kerr is a nice guy. How could he start a fight with MJ? Let's hear it from the GOAT himself. I wanted them to understand what it felt like to be in the trenches. And if you don't understand, then you're not going to respond when the war starts. So the Bulls are struggling, MJ is still fresh out of retirement, and people are starting to think, maybe Jordan isn't that good anymore. He's past his prime and won't win another championship. And Micheal Jordan took that personally. What does that have to do with punching Steve Kerr? It explains why there was so much anger in the Bulls training camp. This wasn't just any season. This was the season they had to show everybody. The best team. If they had another losing season, MJ's legacy would be at risk. MJ's coach, Phil Jackson, he knew this was getting Micheal angry, so he had an idea. So one day at practice, Phil put Steve Kerr guarding me. We're on opposite sides in a scrimmage and he's talking all kinds of trash. Phil sensed my aggression, calling these tick-attack fellows. Now I'm getting mad because for you to be protecting this guy, that's not going to help us when we play New York. It's not going to help us when we play these teams that are very physical. So MJ was guarding Steve Kerr, and with Steve Kerr getting every foul call, MJ was losing his mind. So, no surprise, MJ starts talking trash to Steve Kerr. Not just any trash talk, but serious, personal, disrespectful trash talk. Jordan was filled with rage, and he expected Steve Kerr to just back off. Because remember, he's the nice guy. Steve Kerr was fighting for his spot on the team, fighting for respect from his teammates. So what happens next surprised Micheal Jordan, because Steve starts talking trash right back to MJ, and then things started to get physical. I have a lot of patience as a human being, but I tend to snap at some point because I'm extremely competitive too. Just not really good enough to back it up usually, but I'm gone. I'm gonna fight. He hauls off and hits me in the chest. And I just haul off and hit him right in the. And Phil just throws me out of practice. Steve Kerr made the right decision protecting himself. He says he was embarrassed by the way he was being treated. This time it was Steve Kerr who took it personally. Steve set a screen on Micheal Jordan, leaving Scottie Pippen wide open for three. After that three, the bench team of the Bulls beat Micheal Jordan's team in practice, which was super embarrassing for MJ. Now practice was over. It wasn't. Jordan went right up to Coach Phil Jackson and said, "We are not done practicing." He demanded that they run the same play again. So this time as Steve Kerr goes for the screen, MJ hits him in the face. Steve Kerr starts fighting back and Micheal Jordan punches him in the chin. Steve was on the floor bleeding and with a black eye. But the crazy part about this story is Steve Kerr. He actually won, he lost the fight, but he earned the respect of his teammates. Steve Kerr showed that even the great Micheal Jordan couldn't push him around. Because even though MJ landed the big punch, Steve Kerr threw some punches of his own. And even Jordan himself could respect that. Micheal Jordan was kicked out of practice, and he stormed into the locker room. See the fight. Yeah, right. This part of the story is so suspicious. If Phil Jackson saw the fight, he would have to suspend MJ. I'm guessing they decided to say he didn't see the fight, even though he saw the whole thing. But that's just my theory. Let's go back to the fact. After finding out about the fight, Bill Jackson goes to Steve Kerr and tells him you have to fix things with MJ. Steve was the one who got punched twice. Why would he have to fix things? The next day, they went right back into practice. I'm looking at Steve. Steve got his biggest black eye. When I saw him, I went right up to him. I said, "You know what?
I'm totally sorry.
I just lost my temper." He said it was partly my fault too. I knew not to push you. We two grown men. And teammates stood there for almost 20 minutes, apologizing to each other. What's really cool about this is Steve Kerr was only on the team for a few months. So him and Jordan didn't have a chance to develop a relationship. But this one fight made Steve Kerr and MJ closer than MJ was with most of his teammates. So Micheal Jordan decided he had to give Steve Kerr a phone call. I called Steve. Sick. I apologize, I said, "Look man, it had nothing to do with you. You know, I feel bad." But my favorite part of this story is Steve Kerr's side. Steve talked about how people would not respect him, but he realized that if Jordan respected him, then the entire NBA would respect him. It was probably in a weird way. That's the best thing that I ever did was stand up for myself with him. Because he tested everybody he played with and I stood up to him. He earned my respect, you know, because he wasn't willing to back down to be a pawn in this whole process. From that point on, our relationship dramatically improved in our trust in each other, everything. It was like, alright, we got that out of the way, we're going to war together. And this leads to the absolute craziest part of the story. Now, with Jordan respecting him off the floor, Jordan also began to respect him on the floor, trusting him in important situations, which brings us to the 1997 NBA Finals. Game 6. The Bulls are one win away from cementing their legacy as the greatest dynasty of all time. They need a game-winning shot. The Bulls call timeout and Jordan says the most unexpected thing. Let Steve take the shot. Micheal Jordan, the GOAT, the clutchest player ever. The guy who always took the last shot is giving this moment to Steve, and in this moment, Micheal Jordan's legacy was in the hands of his new friend. Don't run away from Micheal, stay with him this time, whatever you do stay with him if you're picked off it. I know if they're gonna double team me, you know Steve's gonna be open. Tonight Steve Kerr earned his wings and I'm very happy for Steve. This was bigger than basketball. This was about friendship. Jordan knew his legacy was on the line. Jordan knew he would take the blame if the Bulls lost. Not Steve Kerr. But still, he trusted Steve with the shot. And Steve Kerr came through in the clutch. What started with getting punched in the face led to one of the most iconic shots in NBA history. It led to the best season of all time. As the Bulls had a 72-10 record, Steve Kerr said that practice fights were more common than we think, and that this was the third fight they had that season. Phil Jackson thinks it was a positive fight. He said, "I think it's essential for athletes to learn to open up their hearts." Phil, he opened up Steve's face, not his heart. But jokes aside, I understand what he's saying. A physical fight is what they needed to show their emotion. Instead of the team falling apart after the fight, the team came together. While Pippen, MJ, and Rodman were the big three of Chicago, they couldn't have done it without Steve Kerr and MJ coming together as friends. After the fight, the Bulls never lost more than 2 games in a row. It changed the course of their season and of their franchise, where everything is public. Every fight, every argument goes online. Teams have no privacy, and that is sad for these guys because they don't have a chance to get closer from the fight, because right after the fight the internet is going to say that players should be traded. If these teams had privacy where they could handle this stuff behind closed doors like Steve Kerr and Micheal Jordan did, so many more teams would grow stronger from the experience, but instead we are in an era of basketball where just one fight could lead to a dynasty falling apart. Which is why this story is so special. We might never see another one like this again. But what about the 8 most emotional NBA moments? I've got to see that.